Welcome to News with a View, hosted by me, John A. Costa. This is a conservative-leaning podcast. The difference is I take in both sides of an argument and form my own opinion. Now, what's wrong with that, right? Now, I'm a conservative. I am a Republican. A federalist means constitutionalist. And anyone can be a federalist. So puts us on some type of even playing field. Unless you're a person that says that the Constitution is, bad or whatever. Let's see what messages I'm going to... All right. Today, May 29th, episode 80 in my series. That's 80 shows like this I've done this year. I have, I think, over 400 over the past 2 years. So I apologize. Today's going to be one of these days because, man, oh man, am I bad. So, all right, now I'm going to revisit a show I did the other day. The Trump settlement brouhaha. And of course, I'm not a lawyer. I do not give out legal advice, financial advice, or anything. I just move my lips. And the show is expressly my opinion. So, but I do look up facts and I do point to legal standings. And when I say legal standing, when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about vetted law. And you can disagree with the law, I could disagree with the law, but until it changes, that's the law. And the same with procedures and how our government process works. So, when I said, and as I do today, that the settlement with Donald Trump, President Trump, citizen Trump, is perfectly legal. And I stand by that. And you'll have people, and you'll even have lawyers screaming, no, it's not. No, it's not. And you'll have people screaming, yes, it is. And lawyers saying, yes, it is. It's legal. Because it's legal until it is otherwise. Until a court decides. If a court decides. And I'm not saying that this isn't jamming a square peg into a round hole. It's not the case. What the Trump legal team did was dance around very nicely and checked all the boxes. So when they say a sitting president does not have the right to file a federal lawsuit on any, on any executive branch that he controls, because president, he's the boss. And so this came into question by Judge Kathleen Williams out of Florida's, of course, Southern District, where the suit was filed. And the suit was filed on the last day that the president could file. And you'll have people saying, no, it happened, and that was 6 years ago or whatever. The case was not concluded until January 29th of 2026, where Mr. Little John, I keep saying Littlefoot, but Little John was found guilty and sentenced. Up until that day, even though that was the sentencing day for his guilt, he still had the right to pull his plea. It would be very unusual, and the court would have to approve it. But he had the right to do that. And that is why the president waited, because he can't file the suit until he knows for sure that the IRS did their job of finding this person, and not the IRS. It was, at that point, it was the Department of Justice found that person, that the charges against him, he was found guilty and he was sentenced. And as far as the Department of Justice was concerned, we're done here. So at that point, the president and his team said, boom. Now, of course, President Trump became president on the 22nd. Now, my question would be, did someone in the court system, did they try to do that so he would run out of his the statutes of limitation, which is only 2 years? So he was convicted in 2024, January 29th of 2024. Trump had till January 2026, 22nd of January 2026, to file his suit. Now, this went to Judge Kathleen Williams, who read the briefs and checked it, and then went back to the Trump legal team and said, I need more information. I can't, how is there an adversarial or we got to the point where we understand where Citizen Trump, President Trump, was injured by the release of his personal information. The IRS already said that was an unauthorized release of citizens' data, and they had the Department of Justice arrest that guy. So that part, now we're on good terms. We can prove someone was hurt, and there's damages. All right? But you also need another element. It has to be adversarial and an adverseness. And she couldn't get there. she couldn't get there. She said, I need, because Trump can just, like I said, take his magic wand and fix this problem. That's what having full power over the executive branch. Why is he suing? He could fix this problem 1, 2, 3. Where is there a problem here? Because he has the power to make changes of policies. He has the power to make changes in personnel, and it could be fixed. Now, that is true in the sense that he could do that. The legal team was, of course, always in negotiations with the IRS. Because, pardon me again, but the case did not go to trial. The case never made it to even the merit point to say, we'll put it on the docket and, have at it. But once that happens, the IRS loses control of any type of settlement, and the Department of Justice then does this. And there's a thing in law, and this is where it gets tricky. The hazards of litigation and trial. For the IRS, if this went to trial, anyone who was caught up in the release of that data, other than the Trump family or their associates, which is lots of tentacles with that. And regardless of what anyone is saying, I'm jumping ahead, but then could file their own suit for $10 billion and go after the IRS. So they said, hey, all this information got released. We got a lot of people out there that can prove damages. So I know he's asking for $1 billion, $10 billion. And the general counsel inside the IRS is handling all this. They're giving all this information to the Department of Justice Internal Revenue Division. They have their own, DOJ has their own division just dealing with IRS matters. And so they were giving them all the information, but the research and everything is done by the general counsel of the IRS, who has their own legal department. And they surmised that the risk of litigation, losing the case and then setting a precedent that other people can come in now and jump on, the Me Too movement type of situation, that they thought better and said, is there a settlement compromise that we can do here? That's allowed in negotiations as long, in essence, it's not a quid pro quo, which all settlements are a quid pro quo, this for that. But as long as it does not cross the threshold of bribery, coercion, or just outright breaking the law, because a settlement can't make an illegal activity legal. So, I mean, basically that's what that means. But the risk of litigation and the hazard of litigation, both parties can look at that and make a decision. But once it goes to trial, that's off. Now, the important part here is that if the judge would have ruled you do not have the right to sue, any deal that was in the making goes away. Because I don't have to worry about you suing me. The limitations are gone, and you can't do anything about it. And neither can anyone else that was hurt by the release. But we don't know if there was other people that have already settled, because they didn't have to sue. They went there and they threatened, and the hazards of litigation, they might have made these settlements unbeknownst to the public. So we don't know that. But the Trump legal team decided they had a deadline to give these briefs to the Judge Williams. She gave that, I don't know, weeks and weeks and weeks ago. And the clock is ticking. If she doesn't get those briefs, she just dismisses the case and goes, nope. I asked for information. You didn't provide it. I can't make a decision. Boom, out it goes. So, where no one knows is at what point, and of course the IRS knows all this, they have their lawyers and they're not slackers. Why didn't they run the clock out? Why didn't they force the Trump team into giving a brief? Now, I believe that would the Trump team had given a brief on why there's an adversarial condition here, was because Trump could not legally act when he was out of office to correct the problem and expand this donut hole. It would be a stretch, but the legal team would have answered the brief request, and given their reason, and they would have had good reasons, believe me. It just wouldn't say because. There'd be a bunch of things. And the fact that I would have put in there probably first would be there was nothing wrong with the management team at that agency. There was nothing wrong with the language in the policies and procedures. There was nothing in there that the president felt needed changing. So, what was he going to act on? He could have just told them, you're going to settle this with me, and write a piece of paper, and that would have been it. He could have done that. And that's what the judge was actually getting to. It's how can this be adversarial where you could just tell them what to do and the problem goes away. But the problem really doesn't go away. So I think the Trump team could have climbed that mountain. Because then if the judge dismissed it, they could kick it up in appeals and say, no. Even though generally speaking, a sitting president doesn't have that right. Generally. But there is precedent. There's precedent involving previous conduct. Sitting presidents have occasionally filed lawsuits against the federal government for matters unrelated to their official duties or regarding past investigations. Now, what are you saying is the past investigation? The past investigation was the IRS going after Little John for releasing the data of the president and Donald Trump before he was the president. Citizen Trump. So I would think that the president would have to go through a whole bunch of legal maneuvers to get there. But I think that he would have won that argument. The IRS might have also said he would have won that argument. That this is 50-50, and if there's a way for us to avoid it going to court where then it leaves our hands and the Department of Justice, goes into their hands, what is it that you would like to have as a remedy to all this that has happened? And I don't know which came first. Was it a fund set up by the Department of Justice for people to make claims against them for being harassed and set up by the DOJ, a weaponized DOJ? You'd have to prove it. They would have to prove it. And they had a 4-panel, 3 that the president picked and then 1 that the Congress could pick. Panels that would then decide who gets what and how that works. That was the sticking point. And I can get that can be challenged because the power of the purse. Congress controls the power of the purse. The IRS can make a settlement with Donald Trump over his a filing he did, I think, in 2008, where they said he double dipped a loss. And it wasn't a little loss either. It was $162 million. And he said, for me, that goes away. That's my settlement for you releasing my tax information or making it available to someone and not taking safeguards. All right? So I don't know if he asked for that first or asked for that second. Doesn't matter. Makes no difference. But I would be looking at that as a thought process. Whereas now, if the Congress turned around and said the IRS or the Department of Justice overstepped their legal authority to start to use money that Congress has not approved they could strike that portion of the settlement. Since there was no lawsuit, the idea of whether the lawsuit is legal or not is moot. Gone. Doesn't exist. Because it never got ruled on. So Trump filing a suit was perfectly legal. Going ahead and filing it, go ahead. Because we haven't ruled yet whether or not that is he could legally do that. The argument would be is that when you become president, you give up some of your civil liberties. But to become president, you have all those civil liberties walking in through that door. It's a conundrum. And it does make for a problem. The legality of settling and then withdrawing. The routine practice, plaintiffs frequently withdraw or voluntarily dismiss their lawsuits because a settlement has been reached. This is routine and perfectly legal process in federal civil cases. It's not that it's a fraud. You know, you hear them that it's a fraud, we're going to bring you up on fraud charges for pulling. No. Because the lack of judicial review does not matter that the judge has not yet evaluated or found merit to the claims, because the parties mutually decided to end the dispute before a verdict and judicial approval of the underlying merits is not required. So, the president was absolutely within his rights before the case got merit to make a settlement. And the IRS was certainly in power to make a settlement. The question is, was the IRS Department of Justice legally allowed to set a dollar amount in a contingency fund for settlement? You call it a contingency fund. You could call it an escrow fund. The Democrats call it a slush fund. It's not a slush fund. But was the Department of Justice, did they have the authority to do that without going to Congress first? To say, by the way, we're going to need another $1,776,000,000 to put into this fund, and this is how the fund is going to work, and this is how it's going to be managed, and the people on the Hill get to kick it around, which is their right to do. That is the process working. Since there is no dollar limit in the policies, what can be done? Now, let me get to where a settlement becomes fraudulent. A settlement and subsequent withdrawal would only constitute fraud if the settlement itself was achieved through deception. There was no deception, nothing. Examples would include coercion or duress. coercion is, hey, I'm going to get $1 billion here, and I'll make sure that $200 million shows up on your doorstep if we can make a settlement here. The rest would be, if I don't get that $1 billion, you know those new pair of sneakers you just bought? You won't be wearing them. Or you won't be walking in them. And they settle. And then there's material misrepresentation, intentionally hiding, forging, or fabricating key documents to trick the other party into agreement or settlement. This is not the case. So for it to be fraudulent is not a problem. Withdrawing a federal suit after reaching an out-of-court settlement is not fraud on the court. It's standard legal practice. Courts encourage parties to resolve disputes privately and voluntarily. Dismissal effectively ends the litigation. The hallmark fraud for it in federal refers to deliberate and unconscionable schemes that subvert the integrity of the judicial machine, such as bribing, fabricating key evidence, or committing perjury. So, and that's a key one in the E. Carroll Department of Justice investigation, because she lied during her deposition. Okay, a genuine settlement, litigants are under no obligation to prove the merit of their suit before settling. Both parties have the right to resolve a claim privately and avoid further costs, risks, or time before a judge on its validity. So it is definitely okay for the courts to say, you want to drop this? You made a settlement. You both agree to it. Both parties agree to it. There's no problem, right? Mr. Trump, no one, or President Trump, no one has threatened President Trump. No one made threats against the IRS, right? Yeah, it's withdrawn. Gone. And understand that there are statutes of limitations, and you might run out of time to bring the suit back. We all know that, blah, blah, blah. You know, they go through the whole mumbo jumbo. It isn't done in 5 minutes. But if they hit all the check boxes, judge can go, yeah, fine. You're cool. Because I'm sure they had a representative there from the Department of Justice also saying, yes, the settlement has been reached. Thank you for your time, and thank you, blah, blah, blah. So, and again, when a civil lawsuit is filed against the IRS, the agency does not handle the defense alone. Instead, the case is typically reassigned to the Department of Justice, DOJ Tax Litigation Branch, or the DOJ's Civil Division. The DOJ then acts as a legal counsel for the federal government. The DOJ collaborates with the IRS chief counsel, as I said before, to evaluate and manage the litigation. And the initial representation, the legal response, discovery, and settlement. So as the litigation moves forward, they're allowed to ask for a lot more information. Both parties. It's part of the discovery. Many civil tax cases are settled outside the court. Does it all the time. Probably 90% of the cases are settled outside going to court. And outside the IRS saying, I'm going to bring you to tax court, because there is a tax court. You think there's a civil court and then there's a criminal court. Well, off to the side, there's a tax court. And that tax court, you don't get a jury. You get a federally empowered employee, a judge, who decides whether his team, be it the executive or legislative branch, is a problem. How do you think that ends up? How do you think that ends up, folks? All right, the IRS Trump settlement could be nullified through new congressional legislation, legal challenges in federal court, or future presidential administrations rescinding the Department of Justice binding addendum. Now, they could go back, reach back, also known as like clawback. You go back and you go, yeah, I know what they agreed to. We're saying no way, because we have the power of oversight over the Department of Justice when it comes to money. The keeper of the purse, Congress. So they could go back and say, whatever deal you made with Trump, you can't do. We're going to nullify it. Let me tell you, folks, they might nullify the, $1,776,000,000 contingency fund. But his IRS settlement of them not going back and looking at stuff and them dropping their claim of their 2010, we're questioning this deduction. We've concluded that, no, you double dipped. You owe us money. That is certainly within the privy of the IRS's regulation. And if they would strike that, then they'd have to strike it for, even though there are people saying, no, this could be very limited only to Donald Trump. No, because it affects his businesses that are not controlled by him at that time. And that becomes a contract law thing. That would not happen. Now, the contingency fund, yeah. So, could they do that? Yes. Legal experts note that Congress does have the authority to amend how the judgment fund operates or to require congressional approval for future executive branch settlement that exceeds defined thresholds. See, because there was no thresholds there. And it's I had a discussion with someone. I said it could have been $10 quadrillion. Didn't matter. It didn't matter. However, attempting to void past agreements universally would trigger a major constitutional challenges regarding the impairment of contracts and the separation of power. And there are a lot of ways. I mean, there are a lot of ways for them to try, Congress to try to do it. It would be a difficult hurdle because it comes into contract law, and many of the people that are sitting in the Congress, Senate too, so I could go Congresses, are lawyers. And they would go, yeah, this could hurt people filing lawsuits. This could hurt a lot of people here, unintended. And then we get back into the hazard of litigation on why you want to settle things before it becomes precedent. Making a settlement is not precedent. It's an avenue. No one is forced to make a settlement. The government is not required to make a settlement with you, and you are not required to make a settlement with the IRS until it goes to the court. That's it. So, and they're saying that people are, there's a lack of legal standing, to sue over government payouts. Challengers must prove they suffered a concrete and particularized injury. Yeah. Yeah. Having your taxes released and smeared all over the paper and your name dragged through, yeah, you got injured. You got injured. And where they're saying, where the naysayers are saying, is that, well, people that were arrested during the Capitol riots would be eligible to ask for relief through that fund. And the answer is yes, they would be eligible to ask. Doesn't mean they get. At the end of 2028, any money left over goes back into the Treasury's pocket. So this isn't a slush fund. It's a contingency fund. And what Congress is saying, and sitting back and after taking a deep breath, is saying, well, if that thing runs out, if it needs funding again, it has to go through here. So they're already saying that that might be something that could continue, but if it does, it has to go through us. And the reason they put the 2028 there, and they really didn't need to do that, but would be the next administration that come in, let's say the Democrats win. The president can immediately write an executive order and stop that. So the idea that this is a money grab, it's only going to be about 18 months. And no one knows how it works. And I'm just saying, until it is deemed to be illegal, it's a legal act. President Trump settlement is legal until otherwise told. And you could sit there, no, it's illegal, you can't do it, it has to go right now. It doesn't work that way, folks. And I can understand there are certain parts in there that I do agree with people, and the money. The money. I don't care about the IRS saying, I don't care about Donald Trump's $162 million tax write-off, which would really equal $324 million or whatever, because he got to do it twice, according to the IRS. According to other tax people who said, no, he could do that. I mean, the government might question it, but we're pretty certain that he's on good ground, and that wouldn't be fraud. That would be, we filed it, and this is our legal understanding of it. You have a different legal understanding of it. Let's hear it, and we can disagree with it, and then we go forward. So when I said that President Trump's settlement and everything he's doing right now is perfectly legal until otherwise told something else by a court, it's legal. Don't like it? Sure. But is it legal? And the answer is yes. Because he was working inside the executive branch. He didn't have to file a suit. He filed a suit so he could be open and it would be transparent. He could have, like I said, with the magic wand, bink, goes away. Goes away. Now, that goes away, and also the looking back on the families and businesses, tax filings, all the way back to forever back, not forward. Doesn't go forward, but they can't look back. That could be the settlement where Trump turns around and goes, fine, you don't want to do that? Then I get the clock. You stop the clock there when I filed it. I want it restarted. And I'm asking for $500 million in damages. And I'll pay you your $162 million back. That you say that, okay. Take that off the $500 million you're going to be sending me. He could have done all that, but he didn't. So there was an adversarial. He was going to allow it. And under the Supremacy Clause and under a lot of things, the federal government can only allow itself to be sued if it allows itself to be sued. There you go. The president could do it. I realize, again, the president is not expanding the power of the executive branch. You might say he is. I'm saying he's defining it. Now, if that means there are certain restrictions and stuff that need to be placed on the president, well, let Congress do that. Congress can't even define what a woman is as a united party. Democrats can't even define what a woman is. You're going to define what the power of the president is? You got to be kidding me, right? So, 15 minutes almost of talking about this. And again, I just want to reiterate, I stand by my claim that what the president has done is legal until proven otherwise. There you go. You're all about democracy, right? We don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic that has democratic principles. But we are not a democracy. All right. I just wanted to clear that up. I'm not even going to talk about Iran because I don't know what anything is. I know about as much as you do about whatever settlement agreements or whatever, now 60 days ceasefire, because Iran has never kept its word. I'm a little upset that that Trump just didn't say, let's just finish this and get it done, and we wipe out Carg Island, and your oil meaningless to us now, and we were doing fine without it. And if China and India need oil, well, buy from Russia, buy it from Venezuela, buy it from us. It doesn't help us having gas at $4 and $6 a gallon. And I understand that people are upset with that. But a defanged Iran is the best thing that could happen to the Democrats if they were to go back into office. If they ran the shop, a defanged Iran would only help them. And they must get on that bandwagon, and they must sit there and going, we hate the idea that this was started and done, but now that it is, and now that we've seen, that their talk was worse than their bite. Let's do the regime change. Let's get them gone and get people in there that are going to align themselves with the rest of the Middle East in their sanity. So I think the Democrats are missing a huge opportunity to say, hey, we are bipartisan. We are working with the president. We are working to protect our troops. We are working to protect the citizens. But it's hard for them to go down that route when they let 30 million people into this country and our crime waves and businesses had to close down. Cities are bankrupt taking care of these people that the Democrats let in. So it's a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive. Right, Democrats? You're in a tough spot. You are in a tough, tough spot. But sometimes you just have to stand up, brush the dirt off yourself, saying, yeah, we screwed up, folks. And we're going to be better at doing the right thing and following our laws. People are going to say, yeah, well, like Iran, you talk a lot. But I don't know if I'll trust you again. All right, everyone. Be safe. Be well. Please give to a charity if you can. Just make sure that charity is a bona fide charity and aligns to your beliefs. That's fine. I have no problems with that. If you're not comfortable with that, please think about giving to a food bank. They always need food. They always need money so that they can go and take care of a crisis that's presenting itself at that moment. Say a prayer. Prayer does work, no matter what a Democrat might. Depending on what's going on, this May 29th, I probably will not have a show over the weekend. It all depends on how I feel. But for everything else, I want to thank everyone for watching and listening to me and putting up with me. So everyone have a safe weekend. Be well and take care of yourselves. And I'll go to one of my wider shots here and you'd see what this looks like. Go back. Everyone be well as I fade to